live on the Virtual Grip Network, and tonight we hop in the DeLorean to travel back to 1966 for this season's YesterYear Tour Modifieds, where some of the best Tour Mod drivers will compete for one of the most prestigious and unique titles on the iRacing platform, the Old Red Boot. Now, as previously mentioned, 1966 will be the theme of the season, and we're kicking off our 15-race Tour Modified schedule in the great state of Florida for the OBRL Icebreaker 250 presented by VctryLnSprts at the Mecca of Motorsport, Daytona International Speedway. A track that has taken a legend, but created so many more. I'm Zach Chapman, a.k.a. Shaggy, along with my partner in crime, J.R. Shepard. We're lucky enough to have the heartbeat of VGN bringing us all of our sights and sounds, the one and only Ryan Seneker. When we ran this race back in 1966, it was known as the Daytona Permatex 300. Curtis Turner of Charlotte, North Carolina, won the race driving a 1963 Ford. His winnings that day totaled $7,100, which in today amounts to about $69,000. Marvin Ponch of Daytona Beach, Florida, came home second in a 1961 Ford, but the driver bringing home third place is someone I'm sure you all have heard of, a driver by the name of Bobby Allison from Hueytown, Alabama, in a 1964. 50 cars took the checkered flag that day, but by halfway, the field had fell to 25 drivers due to accidents and mechanical failures. One of those drivers who suffered mechanical failure, the late Ralph Earnhardt, father of the legend Dale Earnhardt. Some other notable drivers in the field that day, legends such as Cale Yarborough, Donnie Allison, and Mr. Boogity Boogity himself, Darrell Waltrip. Tonight, we have a field of 30 drivers ready to start their season off on a bright note at the high banks of Daytona, but will the fast speeds prove to be too much for the Tour Modifieds? Will defending champion Brian Bianchi be up for the test in this year's 15-race schedule? Let us find out as the stage is set for a shootout here in Florida. But before I send it over to my man JR to tell us what we can expect this evening, let's take a look at the race format. As always, cautions controlled by iRacing. I mentioned 1966, that is the theme. Single file restarts, and back then, leaders always started on the inside. No more Geico restart zone, the leaders fire on green. We're getting no fast repairs this evening, so it's run what you brung. And that goes for tires. Unlimited tires, back in 1966. They didn't limit us to anything here, JR, but now that we've got the lowdown, JR, hit us with the Daytona breakdown.
Yeah, like you said, Zach, tonight we are at Daytona and we are with the Tour Modifieds. So common in 1966, but not typically a place that we see those cars run at in today's world. I think it's going to be a lot of learning tonight for these drivers as well as us up in the booth. But these drivers, they will be running around 160 mile per hour. That's going to allow them to connect bumpers and do the bump drafting or the push drafting. And they're going to be able to push each other all the way around this place if they choose to do so. But these drivers will have to be careful with those pushes. Hitting someone at the wrong angle can move that car in front and could place that car onto the painted line on the inside here, that yellow line. If that happens, you're probably going to see the big one because these cars do not like that painted surface and the car can spin around very quickly. But bottom line, tonight's racing will be a new experience for all of us here and should be exciting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, and something, I slipped on in my write-up there. This is a double points night tonight, too, something I should have touched on. So drivers, like JR said, we're all going to be learning, but at the same time, they've got it in the back of their minds that a mistake here, it costs you double. You got to do what you can to make sure that thing's running and bring it to the checkered flag because 15 races, JR, not a lot of time to make up a bad race.
Absolutely not, and that's every point counts. So definitely when you come into a double point tonight, you want to get everything that you can because it can be very costly at the end of the season if you mess up. So you're going to see some strategy here tonight. You may even see multiple packs where some drivers just say, hey, I don't want to be around all these cars. I'm going to go back and ride for the first half.
And now I think qualifying comes to a close. We're going to get ready to take a look at our starting grid. And, well, this is JR, and Nice first time working together, so this is something I should have said JR here, but let's go every other row here. I'll start with the front row. Starting on the pole in the 51, Jerry Isaacs to the outside, the 54 of Rex Hoyle.
Rolling off in third place tonight, we got Dale Copeland, and alongside him in the 36 car, Jeffrey Harden.
Row 3 to the inside, Ken Allen to the outside, Gavin Adams.
Rolling off in 7th place, we got Jonathan Tier, and alongside him in 8th will be Lloyd Moore.
Inside of row 5, Tom Ogle to the outside, the Fish, Mark Fish.
Yeah, inside of row 6, we got Randy Schuler, outside Ryan Pittman.
Row number 7 to the inside, Chris Hazlip, the Lipper to the outside, Bill Martin.
Yeah, row number 8 inside, we got Steve Hilbert in that 52 car. Rolling off alongside him on the outside will be Brian Bianchi.
Row number 9 to the inside, the Double Deuce, Bruce Pearson, and to the outside, Alan Wanamaker.
Yeah, row 10 inside, we got Dustin Martinson. Alongside him in 20th place will be Torrance Childs.
Row 11 to the inside, Todd Liston to the outside, Tom Hilbert.
Yeah, rolling off in row 12, we got the 99 of Daryl Weininger. Alongside him in 24th place, Dave Batone.
Brian Johnson to the inside of row 13 to the outside, Jeff Lemire.
27th place tonight, rolling off will be Rory Collins. Alongside him in 28th will be Brian Neff.
And rounding out the field here, 30 cars, row 15 to the inside, Greg Hammond. On the outside, Scott Negus. You know, 30 cars seems like a long way back with JR. Anybody who's run Daytona, I think they know a little better than that, right? You got a long time here. No reason to get up towards the front early.
Yeah, correct. And that's where I think you're going to see some of the different strategies, because these cars are very hard to handle. It's very bumpy racing surface. The cars move around a lot. It's very, very likely that we'll see a big wreck at some point tonight. Some of these drivers are going to go lay back in the back, keep some distance, and try to avoid that. They know that the race, it comes down to those last 10, 15 laps. That's when you need to be in contention. Everything before that does not really matter.
No, interesting to see, too. Normally at Daytona, I mean, obviously this car's not going to handle the same, but you wouldn't be surprised to look at a 30-car field at Daytona and, qualifying be within 0.2, maybe 0.3 of a second, but we're spread out a little bit here, JR. The pole sitter at 58.94, and we're seeing some guys come in, as low as that minute. And now, this isn't something you and I talked about, so I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but looking at those qualifying times, I think there's a chance maybe 3 or 4 of those guys up front can break away from some of these other guys?
I do think that that's a possibility, and the difference in the speeds, because we know that these are fixed setups that these drivers are running. Tonight's is from, the Team 53 setup shop. So everybody has the same setups, but the times are so different, tells me that these cars are difficult to drive. So the guys that have a good feel for the car, they could definitely hook up together and pull away from the rest of the field.
And, something else we'll have to touch on throughout the race, depending on what the green flag runs look like, but not a car that you're used to diving onto pit road doing 150 mile an hour. So hopefully the guys have practiced here and are ready to woe that thing down, because that's going to be an experience all unto itself here as the pace truck dives off. We see that green flag is high, JR. It's ready to fly. We're underway, 100 to play at Daytona International Speedway.
Yeah, and they're breaking away. You can see the leader, he got a nice jump there. Maybe too much of a jump, because we know if you get out too far, those cars behind can really close in fast. So he's going to have to be careful as those 2 lanes get to his back bumper here.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The inside line there, this top 3. Now the 55, man, that double nickel rolling up. Dale Copeland, does he stay to the inside, or does he want to go take the lead? I think he realized a little early he's going to bide his time, roll around in P2. Now, JR, this is something we talk about in other NASCAR divisions all the time, and I imagine it would be the same in these with the draft. That car out front, I mean, they're going to run probably 1 to 2 laps less on it. Oh, we see a car on the apron there, 3rd car in line, and cut myself off. But right now, that car out front, JR, they're using a lot more fuel than everybody else, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely attest to that. So, yeah, if you're out front, you are burning the fuel. You're wide open. Everybody else that is behind you that is in a draft position, they are able to feather that throttle. They may not be feathering it the entire way around the track, but they are feathering it, and that will add up to, like you said, about 2 laps of fuel savings at the end of the day. So this guy that's out front, Jerry Isaacs, he's going to have to wonder if he stays there, is anybody going to come to pit road with him, assuming that we have a green flag pit stop? Because he could come by himself, and that can make a big difference in where he ends up rejoining the track.
Yeah, you see on the left side of your screen there, 3rd and 4th. I think they wised up. They were running side by side, JR, but those leaders, they had got to a little over almost 3/4 of a second. They're starting to mow down into that now, but we almost saw what we were talking about. If you get a couple of guys run real good together in line, you got them guys behind pulling side draft, man, we could see some early 2000s pack racing here at Daytona.
Yeah, absolutely, and you called it exactly right. It looks like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th place cars, they kind of caught on to that, and they said, hey, we got to get single file and catch these leaders, and in doing so, they're starting to open up a slight gap back to the 2 wide pack back there. So it'll be interesting to see if these guys can stay together and work together, if they can start to pull away from that big pack.
Yeah, Lloyd Moore in the 76 now. He's running 7th, but now he's that guy. We're not really sure yet what this bubble is a draft. You know, they're only doing about 155, 160 in the draft compared to the NASCAR, or the faster cars. So what do we think is that draft bubble here, JR? Is it under that 1 second mark? Is it a little over it? I mean, what are we flirting with here?
It's going to be a little hard to tell for a little bit. That's what I'm kind of interested in. I've not worked with these cars around Daytona. They do make a lot of downforce, so we do know that the rear spoiler and everything is pretty high in these cars. So I would think that you could suck up that draft from, say, 1+ seconds back, maybe even 1.5 seconds back. So I think that you have about that much room. I think once you get over that 2 second threshold, you're not going to be able to make it up in just the draft alone. You're going to have somebody from behind helping.
And a name we're familiar with. Now, he's in the 14, supposedly, but it's got a big 9 on the side of it. He's in the 9 ball tonight, Alan Wanamaker. He's one of the only guys. He's up 7 spots. So I guess Dave Batone as well. I haven't seen a lot of guys looking at this leaderboard really moving on up through the field. It doesn't seem like it's going to be super easy to manipulate that draft and try to get around people here today.
No, it's not. And, in the early stages here, these drivers have kind of seen, and we got a wreck on the front stretch.
Yeah, our last season point champion, no caution as he rolls through the grass here. Going to drive out through the DAY in Daytona. But you see, just comes down over the nose of, couldn't tell that car number, but right now, Brian, man, leaders going into 3 and 4 right now, and Bianchi is just going into 1. So right now, leaders weren't going into 3 and 4. What was I doing? I'm out of my world. I just now going down the backstretch. Man, I'm gonna need to drink some water here, get my brain working.
Yeah, and I think what we saw there with the contact was just Bianchi was trying to make something happen. Every driver is single file right now. He's trying to find a way to move himself forward and position himself a little bit better before that first round of pit stops. So he was trying to make that pass by himself, but at the same time, these cars move around an awful lot. And that inside car, he just did not expect it to be moving around and up the track slightly, and they just came together. But yeah, at this point, he's going to be hoping that we have some type of caution, because if not, it's going to be a very long night for Brian.
Yeah, definitely going to need it. We got a 6-car pack up front and about a 4-car pack there. Back to Alan Wanamaker in 10th, and then the big boys, they're starting to catch up. But I think they're all going to need to line up. I get wanting to run side by side. I really do. You don't like being that far back, but I think right now you're really only hurting yourself in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. In races like this, especially when you're in the slower vehicles where you're not running the 200-mile-an-hour type speeds, like you said, we're around 155, 160 in these cars, it's really best to just run single file for a while, get those laps turned. You want to start getting double filed when it's pit stop time. So when drivers start pitting, that's when you want to find the groups and the guys that you want to draft with, because you can make up a ton of time during the pit stop cycle. So really, like you said, these drivers really need to kind of figure it out, work together early on in this race if they want to have a chance.
Hard in the wall, the 54 there. He's still up in the wall in 1 and 2. That right front's broke. He is trying to lock it up. Oh, we just got a caution in time. I think someone nicked that ever so slightly, JR.
Yeah, we'll have to see a replay. I saw him shoot up the track, but did not see what started that mess. So here we go. Oh. Wow.
Now, obviously, you know, it's easy to make assumptions here, but if anything, JR, I've had my wheel disconnect on me. Boy, that's what that looked like. That thing just went straight.
Absolutely, that's what it looks like for sure. Because you know, as the signs of like a losing a tire or tire going down, but that's exactly what you experience on iRacing when you have a wheel issue. So, yeah, it would be kind of interesting to hear from him at some point what exactly happened there.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can get back out there on the racetrack. I'm always one of those guys here, JR. I won't pull a guy up just right on like some people we know because, man, you haven't had the pleasure of racing with me, but I can be one of the most badly tempered drivers. I know it's hard to imagine, and I would not want to be pulled up into the booth after something like that happened to me. But let's, you know what, JR, you let's not pick him, but who you want to pull up here?
You know, let's see if we can pull the leader up if he's available.
Hey, Jerry, Shaggy and JR up here in the booth, man. You got a copy?
Got a copy, man. How you guys doing?
Well, not as good as you, man. You're out front setting the pace right now. What's going through your head after that caution? It looked like you front six. You guys were going to be able to be in control of this thing.
Well, biggest thing is we got a little fuel issue, so I got to come in and pit being up front, and I'm a little worried about how many people are going to come in with me.
Okay, so now what are we thinking? If you were leading this thing, what were they telling you? How long could you have went on a green flag run?
31.
All right, you got any questions for the man, JR?
Yeah, I'm going to watch him. He's coming down pit road here. You kind of answered my question coming in and getting the fuel here, so we'll see how you do here, and good luck moving forward, man.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to a good race. It's been fun so far. This drafting stuff here is a little different than typical drafting.
Hey, before I let you go, you expect to try to stay out front? You're going to try to get back and do some drafting?
I'm going to try and stay out front as long as I can. You know, normally you'd be worried about somebody getting a run or something like that, but I think you saw a single car out front, it's going to be really tough to pass. I think track position is going to be really important.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jerry. Hey, good luck, man. We look forward to watching the rest of the way here.
All right, man. Thanks.
Man, something, you know, he's the one driving. I got to take his word for it, but that's something I don't think I thought I would ever hear here, JR. Track position's king at Daytona.
Yeah, it's, man, in these slower cars where you just can't really get the top speed, it's hard to make those runs. Now, you can do it if you get a group of cars work against that lead car and make that pass. It's very possible to do it and hang him out, let him go all the way to the back of the pack. But you've got to have those people willing to work with you. So it's interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on where the teammates kind of are running out there on the track to see if any of those guys get lined up, because that's ultimately what it's going to take. It's going to be very difficult to pass here.
Obviously, we're pretty early in the race, so I understand drivers not doing it now, and I'd have to assume, you know, how long it takes to throw tires on these things. No chance we do it under green flag, but 100 laps, I know we don't really talk tire wear with these, JR. We talk tire temps. But 100 laps, man, 150 mile an hour in a high banked oval. Are we going to get new tires tonight, do you think?
You're exactly right. It's more about the tire temps. So I think you can definitely go the 100 laps without changing tires. But the thing about these modifieds, especially the Tour modifieds, is the rear end will move around quite a bit. And especially at a place like Daytona, that rear end is going to move around. And the more it moves around, the more that rear tire temp is going to go up. And the freer the car is eventually going to get, to where it's going to be kind of hard to handle. It doesn't mean you're going to wreck on your own, but you may not be able to hold the line that you need to hold in order to keep that driver behind you. So I think that's going to be the big question. It's going to kind of depend on how many cautions we get. But if we get a really long run, I kind of expect to see some guys, at least if you're, mid-pack or toward the back, try to take some tires to get those rear tire temps back down.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And something, I may have mentioned there in the breakdown of the race in the beginning, but I kept throwing at you 1966. Well, back then, obviously, you're a lap car, man. You went to the tail end of the field, so no lucky dogs tonight. And, man, if you get yourself caught at the wrong time making a green flag pit stop tonight, JR, oh, my gosh, that's going to be it for you unless you race your way up to the front.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely a big deal in this series is there are no lucky dogs because we are running the rules like they had back in 1966. So it does make it very tough. But like we talked about earlier in the race, points are a big deal, especially as we get down to the end of the year. So even if you get yourself in one of those lap down positions, you've got to keep chugging along just to make sure you get those points if you want a chance at the end of the year.
No, you really do, because obviously, you feel for him, but the driver of the 54, Rex Hoyle, who we saw, just have that wheel trouble or something, we assume, getting the outside wall. That gained anybody else who stuck around, those coveted points. So you got to just put your head down and let the rubber meet the road and just go out there, act like you're driving on the highway and bring it home. Pace trucks diving off. We're going to enter that restart zone, but that doesn't matter. We go on the green flag. We're back underway. Lap number 11.
Yep, so like you said, these drivers, they all restart single file, so a lot of them are going to stay that way, but we can already see in the back of the pack, drivers that are wanting to make up position, some of the easiest time to do it is on the restarts, but they're going to have to find a way back in this line at some point, and right now those drivers in the back just don't have a way to do it.
No, and one of those drivers I'm a little familiar with there, Scott Negus, sticking to the outside, but now the 66 goes up there. He's going to help him out. The KFC machine. And, oh, man, Ricky, what I'd do for some chicken tenders right now and some French fries from KFC.
Yeah, it'll make you hungry for sure. You see some of these paint schemes and the advertisements that are on them. So, yeah, make sure you eat before you come into the broadcast booth.
It's that first car to duck out of line. I believe is that Tom Ogle on the outside in the 13? Yes, it is. Tommy's gotten one so far, but the space is opened up. Does he drop down and take advantage of it? Because he's stalling out.
Yeah, and that's what you're going to see. You're going to see the drivers that are really smart and know how to get around all of the tracks in general, know how to do the passing here. So you've got to kind of manipulate it. You got to watch for gaps that are up ahead of that car that's in front of you, and you kind of got to get a run and make that pass while there's still that gap there. Ogle is definitely a driver that is very self-aware and knows what kind of moves to make. So he knew in that instance that he could try to make a move, see what worked and didn't work, and he still had room to get back down in line.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that. You see the 26, how he could just go to the outside. And I sat down there in their Discord for a little bit and heard him talking about practice as we see, some cars there in the back shuffling coming out of 4. That was wild. But I heard drivers complaining, JR, that whenever a driver would pull down behind them in the draft, that it would almost slow the car in front of them at first. And I think that's what we saw there. The 26 was able to go back around the outside, but now that the bottom's got momentum, they're starting to regain speed.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's where you've really got to be strategic about when you're making those passes. And as a driver in practice, that's why I'm all about when you have the practice before the race, getting as much seat time as you can, because those very things that you pointed out are things that the drivers can learn and use to their advantage against the other drivers in the field during the race.
Come back there to the double deuce Bruce Pearson. You see he's leading that third pack, and right now, I'm normally all on board with the hanging out train, but that caution, that was a fluke, JR. I got a feeling we may be in for a long green flag run, and I would want to stay as close to that car in front of me as I possibly could. I wouldn't play the normal gap game that I like to play here.
Yeah, absolutely. In these cars, I think you have to stay close enough to that car in front of you that you still have the draft that's pulling you along. I think if you lose that draft, you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable position because, like you said, this race very well could go green. Obviously, we had the one caution that was kind of a weird incident, had nothing to really do with the racing that was going on. So I think we're probably going to go green and could even see another round of pit stops, and the next one being under green flag. So if you have a big gap to that pack up front, you're in trouble because there's very, very high likelihood that you're going to go a lap down during that pit cycle.
Yeah, you know, it makes me wonder too about your leader as we're riding on the rear deck lid there, the 51. I know he talked about fuel being a concern, being out front, but at the same time, track position is king. I mean, how do you do this, JR? Because at this point, he's going to have to pit about a lap or two before those guys behind him, unless he decides to pull out and let that 55 lead the way for a little bit.
Right, and it's tough because, you know, like Jerry was telling us under the caution, he feels like it's going to be very hard to pass, so being the leader is the best place for that. But you're going to use more fuel, especially as we go green longer and longer. So, in my opinion, he's probably going to have to find a way to save some fuel. He's never going to be able to save what the guys behind him are saving, but if he can just save an extra lap, that could be a big deal for him as far as being able to find somebody to pit with and have a drafting partner with as he exits the pit. So I think he's really going to have to pull back that throttle about 90-95% only and make the drivers behind him push him in order to try to save some of that fuel.
Yeah, the guys, well, we were watching on screen were the battle for about 9th through 17th. Now we fall a little further back, and these guys are still holding on to that middle pack, but from Alan Wanamaker on back, we've really seen a big gap develop to the cars in front. Lloyd Moore and Ryan Pittman are doing their best as a two-car tandem to run down those front six, and I'm really impressed at the speed they're putting down as a two-car pack. They've been steadily mowing into this gap.
Yeah, and I think that's, as a driver from a learning experience, I think they're learning what works and what doesn't work. Two cars appear to be faster than 4 or 5 cars in a row if you're able to stay organized. And also, they're finding that distance that we talked about that will allow them to draft back up to that pack. It's obviously working. We see them closing in on the screen big time right now. So they know that that works, and by hanging back, you know, I'm not sure they want to completely get mixed in with those drivers up there, because if they hang back a little bit, that allows them to be able to react to anything that may happen in front, such as an accident or a crash.
We got a battle for the lead. We got two guys ducking to the outside here. The Fish and the 69 of Jonathan Thier. Are we going Thier or Tears? H silent, or are we pronouncing it tonight?
You know, I'm not sure. We're going to have to learn these drivers over this season and figure out some of the things. I hate calling someone's name incorrectly. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who drives the 69 is cool with me. We'll have to pull him up here to the booth if we're lucky, or not lucky, if we do get another caution. I almost worded that wrong. We do not want another caution, but if we do, we'll pull up the driver of that 69. And I think, not to interrupt you there, JR, but you mentioned how those two cars behind, how they were catching them really fast, didn't want to get up there and mix up. You hit the nail on the head, boy. They lifted that thing out, and they just want to watch those guys race right now.
Yeah, exactly. These cars are they're hard to handle. It's hard to describe to those that are watching from home, but they are hard to handle. These drivers are doing a very nice job of making it look easy, but the cars move around a lot, especially in this draft, so it's very easy for contact to be made, an accident to happen. So those two drivers that we've been watching, you know, Lloyd Moore, Ryan Pittman, they're aware of that, and they are hanging back, but they now have in their memory bank what works and what doesn't work, so they know what they need to do in order to close in on that pack later in the race.
Yeah, and, you know, to go a little deeper into what you said, yeah, okay, Daytona, obviously not the trickiest track in the world that we run at, but I have yet to ever see a league that has run a tour mod race at Daytona International Speedway, so it's not something as a tour mod driver, even if you're one of the best, that you're going to come across on a weekly basis. So it is definitely a wrench getting thrown into everyone's plans here.
Yeah, absolutely. These drivers are learning, and I think that's why you're seeing the pack so spread out. Is a lot of the drivers are trying to be cautious because they know how difficult these cars are to drive because of how much they're moving around. And yeah, you see that Wanamaker here leading that group. I think that's the third group that's in line. They're trying to catch back up. They've got a good pack here. Going to have to watch the lap times because, like we said earlier, it looked like the two cars together was the fastest way. I'm kind of curious to see 3-4 drivers in a line if that's actually slowing them down, because that's what we saw earlier.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, you know, back to those two drivers, I don't mean keeping the jump on Pittman and Moore, but they rotated, JR. That is smart. That is smart. It almost slipped on me, but they're the only guys so far to really be rotating, and I think that's going to come back to benefit them. They're going to be able to pit together if they keep doing this correctly. Yeah,
absolutely, and they've caught the lead pack here, but yeah, rotating like that, you're allowing each driver to take a turn leading, and like we talked about it, the guy out front is using more fuel, burning more fuel. If you have somebody that's willing to work with you and you can swap that lead back and forth, you're essentially equalizing the fuel that you're using. We see it in the Indy 500 in real life. That's what the drivers do, so very smart on their part.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing Ken Allen in the 81 there. I think, yeah, that's the 81. I was looking at it upside down. It said 18 to me. Oh, boy, it could be a long one. But he was running up there. It looked like he had maybe lifted going down the backstretch, but he's back in it. I thought he was going to want to drop to the back, but never mind.
Yeah, there's definitely more jockeying for positions in this lead group than what we've seen the last 10 laps. So a little bit odd because we heard from Jerry it's about 30 laps on fuel is what these drivers can do. We're only about a third way through that fuel run, but it kind of seems like some of these drivers are wanting to position themselves a little further forward just to get ready for that green flag round of pit stops that we may have coming up.
Yeah, and every time they do go side by side, the 9 of Alan Wanamaker, that smile gets that much bigger because now that pack has wised up and they're all single file, man, they are really, really coming at these guys. So before we know it, we're going to have a big pack here again, but we're side by side towards the front, battle for third.
Yeah, Darren Pittman, he's really made this work, and I kind of caught my eye earlier with other drivers that were going out there by themselves. They were kind of making that work for at least a lap and a half. He's done that, and now because he's done that, he's got drivers that are going with him, so they're going to continue to move forward. And this is kind of something that Jerry up front did not want to see, is drivers really mixing it up. He'd prefer these guys to stay in line and pull away from the rest of the field, but those drivers at the back of this pack know that they have a big gap, so they're like, hey, let's go learn and try to figure out how we get to the front. That's going to pay dividends toward the end of the race.
Now, we talk all the time, and, you and I were doing a little history before the show, how drivers never forget anything. If you are the driver of that 42 and you just helped push the 08 to the front there, what are you thinking? How are you? Do you remember that here with a couple to go? Because I'd be a little PO'd.
Yeah, I think you remember it ultimately if it comes back around toward the end of the race. But the thing with Daytona, it's about, we hear in real life co-opetition. So you've got to cooperate with your competition out there and work together in order to try to benefit yourself. That's obviously what Darren was doing there. But this early in the race, you really got to kind of work with that guy that's helping you, because you might need that guy later in the race. So definitely could come back to bite you.
Yeah, and I think the 42, there he goes. He's going to get a run on the outside, and he's going to come and see if he can't help the 55 this time of Dale Copeland. He's got a big run on the outside. I don't think we're going to see 3 wide yet, but, man, with a run like that, we may see it later, JR.
Yeah, definitely. It shows that there's, obviously plenty of room to do it. The thing that worries me is you see on corner entry, these cars really move around a lot, and when you get 3 wide, that inside line, you can see them. They're not all the way against the yellow line there. When you get 3 wide, that inside line is going to be right against that yellow line, and we talked about it. In these cars, that yellow line is very treacherous, so if one of those cars get down there, that could be when we see the big one occur.
Now, just to hypothesize a little bit, I saw some guys trying it in practice. It seemed to work every now and then. But we see guys, when they come to the NASCAR stuff here, JR, have so much success right up against that outside wall. Do we have any drivers you think maybe willing to try that here before the thing's over? Or is it just too far of a way around?
I'm worried that it's too far of a way around in these cars just because of the speeds we're running, kind of the speed limitations that we have, even in the draft and when somebody's working with you. I'm afraid that that far outside line is just too far. I think you can make the middle work if you get enough cars together, but I'm not sure the outside would work. It would be very cool if it did, because obviously we see a lot of passes in real life using that high line.
And that 55, man, he's not giving up, but we're riding off the nose of the 9 there of Alan Wanamaker, and since I had talked about them running those guys down, JR, they've really stalled out. Even with the guys in front racing side by side, they're just not having that success, and now they see a group pull to the outside. This side trap, that's not going to help them out, will it?
No, not at all. It's definitely going to slow them down, and I don't think the side draft is anywhere near as effective as it would be in one of the NASCAR vehicles, but it's still there. So if you get somebody real close to your right rear quarter panel, it's going to actually slow you down. It looks like that driver that's trying to pass you is speeding up, but it's actually slowing you down because they're packing air on that rear spoiler right there by getting so close to your right rear quarter panel, and that's kind of what we're seeing in this group right now. Occasionally, one of those guys is able to get right to that right rear quarter panel of Alan Wanamaker and pull him back.
Man, I'll tell you, Alan is really holding on to that thing, because you could see him get a bump there from the 13 in the middle of the corner. And I'll tell you, JR, if that's happening to me in a Tour Mod on lap 25, I am yelling over the radio.
Yeah, because it's not a comfortable feeling, especially when you're in the corners if you're getting those little bumps and pushes. So you can see right on board here, the car is sparking. That's because we've got so much downforce in these cars. They are rubbing the ground through the corners. That's typically not a huge deal in other vehicles, but in these modifieds, they're already moving around enough as it is. As you bottom out, the car is going to kind of move back and forth more and more. And if somebody hits you while that car is moving in the wrong direction, it can send you for a ride. So yeah, definitely. If I'm getting hit right now, I'm probably either screaming on the radio or bailing out to go to the back of the pack here.
Yeah, right there. One of the two for sure. Either just let the guy go and maybe you return the favor a little bit, let him know what you were going through out there. And now we see the 08. Oh, it looked like we were going to have a little contact there maybe. Late move to the outside, wasn't able to go up and shut the door. Now you see these guys, they shouldn't slow each other down too bad, but the front two, I think they see what's going on in their mirror. They lined up here fairly quick. They're going to try to pull away. Yeah,
they're definitely going to try to pull away because they see what's going on here. I think the third place car in line, he may be able to get back up there, the 42 of Fish, and it looks like he's going to. If that group behind him gets organized, they can definitely close back in too, but once they get racing side by side, that's when you see those gaps open up, and it's an opportunity for those guys that are out front to just hook up and try to pull away.
And they see the Fish, he did link up, and now there's other guys maybe not messing around as bad, saw the writing on the wall, didn't want to run side by side. Other than at the back of that pack, of course, Lloyd Moore to the outside. But Alan Wanamaker, Tom Ogle, and Scott Negus, they've got that 3-car connection working now, and they have started to dip back into that time. But as soon as I say that, JR, Negus gets a little impatient here. He's going to go to the outside. He wants to lead this pack.
Yeah, he definitely does. And, you know, for Alan, he's been out front for so long, it's not a bad thing if that driver were to get out in front of him, because then he can start trying to save some fuel and be more level playing ground or level playing field of these other drivers that he's been with. They're definitely going to get by him. So we actually see 2 cars clear Alan going into turn 3 here, but Negus wasn't able to get down. He continued to stay up.
And so based off the intel that we got from the leader early on, Jerry Isaacs, I'd assume pit stops coming around lap 40, JR, maybe a little earlier.
Yeah, it'll probably be somewhere around lap 40. You may see some guys play a little bit of a strategy and pit a little bit before that, but ultimately, if they can go to lap 40, and it is about a 30-lap run, that means they can make it from lap 40 on one more stop if they're smart. So I think you're going to see guys go as long as they possibly can during this run.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was getting at right there. I think that magic. Oh, Alan Wanamaker, man, he gets another bump from that 13, and that's where we were saying it can unsettle that rear end, and it hiked him down the track. People have no idea how hard it is to save that car, doing 150 when half the car's on the apron, JR.
Yeah, I can tell you that these drivers have done a phenomenal job. I've seen a couple of them get their left sides completely down on the apron a couple of times, and I said it earlier, that they're making it look very easy. It is not easy. So these drivers have their hands full. They're doing a fantastic job of keeping those cars under control.
Oh, I thought we were going to have a move to the outside there. Mark Fish, he lined up with, I believe that's Jonathan. We'll go tier until we get to talk to him. That's what I'm going with. But he got shuffled to the outside, and now Mark, and now he remembered what it was like to be left out all alone, and now he returned the favor. So, guys, I mean, they don't forget here.
No, definitely not. That's going to be a continuing trend as we get through the second half of this race in a little bit. But, yeah, these drivers are learning what works, what doesn't work. They're also learning who to work with and who not to work with. And we're seeing a lot of that start to play out. It's going to get interesting after we make the round of pit stops, assuming we still have a good pack together, because right now that front group, they pulled away by about 2 seconds from the rest of the field.
Yeah, they really have. It's dropped into a 3-car group, possibly 4 if Pittman in the 08 can link up, but he's about a 3/4 of a second behind those guys in front of him, and then all of a sudden, here comes Negus in that group, and, well, we saw them earlier. JR, they were running with the 9 Alan Wanamaker. He lost the draft. So we're seeing 3-car, 2-car packs, like we've touched on earlier, kind of dominating this thing.
It is, and, we're far enough into this race. Daytona, it does, it's not typically all about handling at Daytona, especially in the slower vehicles, but we're at the point where we've had enough laps. We're getting a lot of tire temperature into those tires, and that means these cars are going to move around more and more. And the more that these cars move around, the more we're going to see those packs start to separate. You're going to see the drivers that have a good handle on what the car feels like. They're going to be able to continue to move forward, while some of the other drivers are going to start to move back because that car is becoming more difficult just to drive by itself. A little long when you got other drivers around you.
Now, if the people out there listening couldn't tell, JR's the good driver. I'm just the okay driver here, so we'll get all our knowledge from JR. But all right, we're coming in for green flag pit stops here, JR. If we lock up the tires, do they have enough time to cool down on pit road, or are we going to be doing a dance on the flat coming back onto the racetrack?
It's going to be tough pitting in these things. In the stock cars, you have multiple gears. You can kind of use the gearing to help slow you down. In these Tour Modifieds, you've only got the one gear. So you're basically only going to be using the brakes. You're not going to be shifting to slow yourself down. You're not going to go into first gear until after you're on pit road in order to prevent locking up of the rear end housing. So it's going to be difficult not to lock those front tires up. These drivers are going to have to have a mark that they've already tried out in practice, and if you haven't tried your pit stop in practice as far as pit entry, you're probably going to be in trouble, because it's going to be very tricky. If you slide those front tires, it's probably going to get really hot. You're ultimately probably going to need to change those things in order to have any type of handling. Yeah,
and we talked about that. If you got to change those tires, good night, because if you're taking four tires under green flag pit stop, there's no chance you don't lose the draft and go a lap down. And with the way the format is, no lucky dogs. You've got to absolutely nail everything, or double points. You just watch them all go down the drain.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be tricky, and in my opinion, if you're someone that's not comfortable making high-speed pit stops in general, or green flag pit stops, you need to be a little bit conservative. It's better to be a little bit conservative and lose time coming to pit road without messing your tires up than it is to mess those tires up, have to take the extra time changing them, and lose a lot of ground. So some of these drivers just need to be a little bit easy, tone it down a little bit, and it'll pay off.
Yeah, especially because, coming back to, let's say you speed a little bit, that is a long drive down pit road all by yourself doing 55 mile an hour. So not the club you want to be in, but we're on lap 34, so getting closer here. The 51, he's been out front this whole time. He's going to have to hope he's got a friend behind him who's not going to hang him out and come down pit road with him, because he's really gone aggressive in this 51.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's worried about the track position. I completely get it based on what we've seen. We have seen some racy situations, but ultimately, if that driver out front's got someone kind of working with him, he's able to stay there. So that's where the 51 wants to be. But when it comes pit stop time, he's got to have a friend, because if he ends up pitting by himself, he's going to be in trouble. And we see Brian Neff, he's actually making a round of pit stops here.
Yeah. On lap 35 all by himself. I don't like this. That means he's got to stop at least 2 more times. Hopefully he can get that thing out before he goes a lap down, or what we just discussed. If you go that lap down, boy, oh boy, going to be a long night for Neff.
It is, and the one thing we saw there with Neff, that's something else the drivers have to recognize when they're on pit road. Neff actually slid through his box, so they will not pit the car. If you're outside of your box, you're going to have to back it up, put it in reverse. It's not easy to do in these cars. You will lose a lot of time doing that, so be very conservative when you pull in.
No way did I not notice that he is running a Winn-Dixie throwback on that thing. All right, JR, here's where you find out that I'm a diehard Mark Martin fan, and that was one of my favorite Busch paint schemes. Absolutely love that Winn-Dixie car.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian Neff has always ran that. As long as I've known him, has always ran a Winn-Dixie type car, and I'm definitely a big Mark Martin fan. So one of the best drivers that's ever been behind the wheel. So it's cool to see those type of schemes out on track giving a tribute there.
Yeah, random fun fact. And I'm telling you, you can think I'm a liar, but it was awesome. I was 12 years old down here at the Daytona Speedway for the Coke 400, and Mark Martin crashed out of that race, was in a really bad mood, and when he was leaving through the parking lot, he almost hit me in the parking lot, and it was awesome. I was a 12-year-old kid walking out in front of a car. He waved to me and said sorry. It was so cool. I often wished he would have actually hit me with that car. It would have been a neater story, but... Lap 37, inching closer, and the 51, maybe a little too late, but we do have that new leader now, Mark Fish. He's going to be the snowplow for a little bit, but I just think if you're Jerry Isaacs, the damage is already done to that fuel tank.
Yeah, I gotta think with the way the 51's dropped back, maybe he's trying to do a last-ditch effort of saving a little bit of fuel, because he knows maybe he does not have anybody that's willing to work with him or pit with him, but the damage is already done. When you've only got 3 or 4 laps before you're pitting, you're just not going to be able to save the couple of laps that the other drivers have already saved.
I just keep waiting, you know. I don't want a driver to have to dive off before that lap 40 mark, but if we see a guy go this time, maybe next time, oh boy, is it close. And I think they're under the impression that they won't be able to lead the pack the rest of this way until the last lap. So hopefully that 51 can figure something out. But I mean, as you mentioned, he is clearly lifting or doing something, because Mark Fish has driven out to a second lead all by himself at the Daytona Speedway. And that doesn't happen without a little aid.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely full throttle pulling away from these guys. You can see, because the 51 and the group behind him is actually slowing up, there's a pack that's of 2 cars that are kind of ducking out, trying to get that track position before this round of pit stops. But I just don't think they're going to be able to make it work, because it seems like that inside line's kind of playing a little bit of a games with the rest of them, because they're trying to save fuel, but they're also able to speed up when they need to.
Yeah, it's just, man, I'm so perplexed right now, JR. I really am. I mean, seeing that lead, I'm just watching him walk away on the leaderboard. He's got up to 1.9 now. I mean, there's no chance we get a Mark Fish all by himself to the end of this thing, is there?
I wouldn't think so, but we're learning. We're learning what works and what doesn't work. And, you know, clearly we saw Mark throughout this run. He had the draft ultimately through this run, so I'm sure he has saved a ton of fuel. He's to the point to where he can clearly make it to lap 40 being by himself out front, so that's what he's doing, trying to open up a big lead to help himself during this round of pit stops.
Now we saw this 50, or wait, no, that wasn't the 51 and the 69. Excuse me, that was the 69 and 26. So I was going to give you guys false information. I thought maybe he linked up with the guy that pushed him up there, but Jerry led this whole thing. He never had to work his way through the field. So right now it seems like he's back in the throttle. They're trying to creep into that gap. They slowly are. You're watching it go down on the leaderboard. But now they're going to pull side by side one more time.
They are, and I saw the 51. He tried to do some bump drafting there with the 69 car, and it kind of got the 69 car upset and kind of moved it out of the way and ultimately opened that bottom lane back up for him. So that's kind of something else to put in the memory bank when it comes down to the end of the race. If it becomes hard to pass, you might be able to move that guy around in front of you.
Got a couple more guys ducked down pit road there on their way back out. It seemed like all drivers that had to run by themselves, JR, so I would think the 51, his time's got to be coming here soon if all those other drivers are having to duck down pit road.
Yeah, absolutely, but you know, we're now at lap 40. We're completing lap 40 this time around. I'm very, very surprised the 51's been able to do as well as he has. So he's obviously done a nice job of saving as much fuel as he could while leading the race.
Yep, here comes the big group. A couple guys ducked off in front, but Alan Wanamaker and pretty much the whole gang behind Hazlett, Bianchi, Weininger, Pearson, Johnson, Negus. Here they all come, and we're watching guys. Seeing the double deuce, he did a good job of just creeping into that pit, but once again there are a couple guys almost overshooting this thing here, making it a tough green flag pit stop.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we're going to see this front pack start to make their pit stop this time by, so be interesting if they all come or if some of them choose to stay out and try to make up some time on the track. But here you see the 51 is ducking in.
One leader staying out all by himself. The 55, the Dale Copeland. Will that come back to haunt him? As you see the 30 there almost trying to make a pass on the 42 coming down pit road. And here come the rest. This is going to be interesting to see who wins the race off pit road. This is for the lead.
Yeah, and ultimately, those drivers coming off pit road have got to get organized quickly. They've got to get up to speed as quick as possible. That means getting single file and drafting and helping each other, because if they do that, they can make up time on that lead pack that they were behind.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Scott Negus pulling out on the backstretch here, and Neff perfectly going to come up to this rear end. So Negus had to pit by himself. So did Brian, but it's actually going to work out for the both of them here, possibly.
Yeah, and, you know, it's nice. I've always talked about it with the guys that I race with. It seems to be a better option if you have a smaller group when you come back out after pit stops, because you can get organized easier. Having 2 or 3 vehicles together can make up a lot of time on those other drivers that are trying to sort it out.
We are seeing some of these pit times roll in. It seems like to fill this thing up with fuel, it's taken at minimum. See one guy, they got away with it's actually Neff. 36-second pit stop. He had the fastest pit stop. Pretty much everybody else around that 38 seconds. So I think that tells me with Neff, maybe he didn't go as long as he could have. On fuel, we had saw him, you know, come down and be one of the early pit takers. And now we know he's going to have to pit 2 more times because of how early he pit. So that may come back to bite Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless he gets himself in a great situation where he's really able to conserve on the throttle pedal and save a lot of fuel. I'm not seeing him being able to make up that amount of laps, but you never know if he gets himself in a good situation. But right now, he's just out there with one other car, and he's not going to be able to save that type of fuel.
And you saw there, that's the 81 of Ken Allen. He's going to inherit the lead. But behind him, we've got the 55. The 30 and the 31 linked up pretty tight. But 2 drivers back, okay? We're talking about the 69 and the 42. JR, if you're that 69, I mean, how quick are you letting off that throttle? You got to link up as fast as you can, right? You don't want to leave that gap that big.
Yeah, absolutely. You need that driver behind you pushing, or you need a car in front of you, and you see the car coming off pit road, the 55. They were able to pass him, so he's going to have to back up to that 42 car and get that run. Now, it is nice, like I talked about, this is a smaller group of 3 cars. If these guys work together instead of trying to fight against each other, they can catch those cars that are ahead of them.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they're going to have to do. And if you're the 30 of Gavin Adams, you got a big decision here. They just ran down the leader, and I think he made the right decision. He's going to stay in line. If you duck out right now, you start passing, you know, maybe blow by him, you all of a sudden give that pack behind you a little more help. So I think they're doing the best they can to turn this into a 3-car race right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what you want to do. If you can take control of this race, if it stays green flag and you guys can just stay organized in a small pack and pull away, continue to pull away from the rest of the cars, then you're guaranteeing yourself, assuming you keep it clean, that at the end of the race, you're racing it out for a good, solid top 5 finish, which is extremely important in this double points race.
No, and, you know, for the average viewer out there watching, you know, we don't have the average viewers. We have diehards, so they understand a little bit what's going on here. But this isn't easy to manipulate, you know, to get you and a couple guys up there, take control of a 100-lap race. This is guys executing. I mean, nailing pit stops under green flag, not babying the car, pulling on the back stretch, because you know as well as I do, JR, you can lose a second and a half just driving a little too scared coming out on the racetrack with those tires cooled off. And I mean, those guys, they just absolutely nailed it, and they deserve to be into control.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we talk about how hard these cars are to drive, how much they move around. Well, once those tire temps come down and they're a little bit cooler, they become even more difficult to drive, especially when you're on that apron, because you've got to go all the way around the apron on turns 1 and 2 before you enter the backstretch after pitting. So these cars are hard to drive. These drivers that are up front, those top 6 drivers specifically, they did a fantastic job of keeping that momentum and not losing speed during the pit cycle.
Well, JR, obviously I'm not encouraging bad racing at all, but when we're back here in one of the further packs, are we maybe a little more aggressive, knowing that a caution can help tighten the field up and bring me back into a chance to win this thing? Or are we just hoping it doesn't happen near us and just biding our time?
I think for the majority of the guys out there, they're kind of hoping that they're nowhere near that accident. I think a lot of them are just going to try to stay clean and turn laps. But you never know. There are some drivers that may go, hey, I need a caution to get caught back up. And as the laps get further and further into the race and you're not getting that caution, you could become desperate and, in fact, could create some type of action that brings out that caution.
Yeah, and, you know, as nice as these green flag runs are, we have not seen 3 wide yet. And I'm telling you, JR, we're going to see it before this thing's over. So plenty of time to go fill up that drink and pop that popcorn, because we're about 3-4 laps from halfway.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we have seen some jockeying for position, some movement, drivers trying things, a little bit of touching here and there, but nothing that I expect to see as we get down toward the end of this race. I think it's going to get a lot more aggressive. These drivers are really going to be pushing hard at that point. So, yeah, absolutely. Anybody that's watching this, stay tuned, because it's going to get wild toward the end of it.
I was choking myself there. I'm fine. We're back. All right, so going down the backstretch here, you see those front 3 up front, JR. Pretend for me right now we're coming to the white flag, okay? What guy do you want to be? What's your car number right now? Where are you positioning yourself for the white flag?
Normally I would want to be that 30 car, the car that was in second place, but we just saw Jerry Isaac go from 3rd into 1st, from turn 4 to the start-finish line. So it didn't take him much time at all to do that, and that's something that, once again, he's learning. He wants to be in control of this race anyway. He's learning that, hey, if I lose track position at the end, what will work? And I think we just saw it there. So ultimately, I think you want to be in a small single file pack and be the last car in line there to make a huge run.
No, you're exactly right there. You know, he's just testing the waters a little bit. And, well, if you're the 30 of Gavin Adams or now the 81 of Ken Allen, I mean, you just saw the 51 do it. Do you risk trying it yourself right now to see if it works? And maybe let that second pack catch you, because they are closing the gap. They're down to within 2 seconds.
Yeah, ultimately, I think you got to stay organized right now. I know the 51 did it, but he wants control of the race, like he said when we spoke to him earlier. I think Ken and Gavin, they're going to have to stay single file so that they can continue to have that gap that they have. But when that second round of pit stops come around, I fully expect 1 or 2 laps before the end of that. That's when I would be trying to see if I can do the same thing that the 51 was able to do.
See that 26 of Lloyd Moore. Look to the inside of Ryan Pittman. Those 4, man, I'm telling you, since green flag pit stops, they've been about that same gap behind the 87 of Todd Liston. Why I say that is, JR, Todd's all by himself. Those guys racing that hard haven't been able to close in on the 87.
Yeah, it's odd. You know, the type of drafting and racing that we've kind of seen out of these Tour Modifieds tonight. So, yeah, I'm super surprised that Todd's been able to maintain that gap since that round of pit stops. And I know Todd is hating this at the moment because he's obviously wide open using a lot of fuel. He'd prefer to be in a pack. But that pack's just not making much ground on him, which is very surprising. But we can see from out the back of Todd's car there that pack behind him keeps racing each other. They keep going side by side. They're slowing each other down quite a bit. They need to get organized. They really need to get each other all together here to make this work.
Yeah. And, you know, one of those guys that you're talking about running side by side, well, it was that 08 of Ryan Pittman, and now he just lost the draft on that car behind, on that pack behind Todd Liston, excuse me. So, I mean, some of these guys, they're just, it's hard knocks here today at Daytona. This was not going as smooth for some of these drivers as I thought it would. There really is a lot of jockeying to try to find your slot in the draft here.
Yeah, there really is. And, you know, I don't know the specifics of these drivers, what they're using or not using, so we know that they all have the same setups, but there are changes that you can do, and a lot of them are driver preference changes, such as your steering ratio, brake balance, things like that. A steering ratio can make a difference here. It can keep you from scrubbing off speed in the corners, particularly in a car that is known for scrubbing speed off like this Tour Modified. So some of these drivers might be using different steering ratios, and like we're seeing with Todd by himself, just because he's able to be smoother through the corners, maybe that's paying dividends down that straightaway.
Yeah, it really is. You know, last time by, I'm going to throw our producer here on the spot. Ryan, do you have the ability to put it on Todd Liston and click the laps button where it shows the lap time he's running and then the drivers around him? I think he may be able to hunt that down for me. Because, I mean, we had talked about it, but he is consistently running faster laps than that 3-car pack in front of him, and everything I know about Daytona is turned into a lie.
Yeah, I mean, he's catching the cars that are in front of him, and, you know, there's 3 cars lined up in front of him, so you would expect that those guys would be able to pull away, but the last time by, he was over a second faster than those guys, so very odd. We do see that this last time by, the cars behind him were actually a little bit faster than him by about a quarter of a second, so I kind of expect that, but it's very odd. Todd is turning some really fast laps by himself.
No, and I think that almost goes to what you were kind of talking about earlier, JR, just how it may not make sense to the viewer, but really just with the car dynamics sometimes it really is easier to run the cars in maybe 2-4 packs, and just that third car maybe throwing off the funk a little bit. As you see that third car right now, Mark Fish, he's not even really on those front 2 in front of him, so he may just be disturbing their air wake and, you know, kind of limiting what those cars in front of him can do.
Yeah, it very well could be, and you know, the one thing that I got the most out of riding on board with Todd there is just how smooth he is through the corners. That's going to gain you 1, maybe 2 mile an hour down the straightaway compared to those guys that are moving around a little bit in the corner, scrubbing that speed off. Because we saw these cars are bottoming out in the corners. They are moving around a bit. That scrubs speed off. So Todd's doing a fantastic job. These guys that are up front kind of working together, trying to push each other, those cars are moving around quite a bit, and it can scrub speed off. So yeah, it's odd, but that's something that these drivers are going to have to remember as we get past halfway here.
Yeah, and speaking of those guys up front, Ryan just had it on there. We got a new leader, Gavin Adams, able to get around the 51, but I think the 51 maybe learned his lesson from the end of that long green flag run on the first time when he was having to let out of the throttle and coast that thing to save some gas. I think he's just saving his butt right now, making sure he can go on one more stop.
Yeah, and when we talked with Jerry during that caution, he was really concerned about track position and being able to maintain the lead, but I think he's more comfortable now knowing what he can do when he's behind 1 or 2 cars and be able to get that lead back. So I think he is more comfortable riding behind someone else, trying to save fuel during this run. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. We expect these guys to be able to go to where they can make it on just this last pit stop, be able to make it the rest of the way. So Jerry wants to make sure that he can definitely hit that mark of being able to get to lap 70 before he pits.
27 of Brian Johnson finally able to get to the front of that third pack. He's going to see if him and Brian can maybe try to carve into this gap. They got a long way to go if they want to be running for the checkered flag here at the end of this thing. I mean, our leaders just now getting ready to dive off into turn 1, so they're about 12 seconds back here. That's a long ways when you're going 150.
Yeah, that's a lot of distance to make up, and ultimately I think they're going to need some help in order to get it. Oh, and we see coming off of turn 2 there,
yeah,
the 51 just hanging left. So yeah, as handling starts to go away, we're kind of getting to that point about halfway through the run where tire temps are coming into play, cars aren't handling the way that you want them to handle, and you're able to kind of move that driver that's in front of you around just from the air manipulation. And I think we kind of saw a little bit of that with 51 there.
Yeah, and that 30, he wanted no parts of that. He's like, we're just 5 over halfway. I think you can have it one back, Mr. Isaacs. He goes to the top, and now Ken Allen. We may have a new leader. 3 late changes in 1 lap. That's a treat from what we've been seeing.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. These guys starting to dice it up a little bit here, and they're continuing to learn. I'm learning a ton in the booth. Things are happening that I did not expect to happen. Obviously, when the 51 moved up to pick up Gavin, I did not expect Ken Allen to have that kind of a run and be able to get the lead at the start-finish line. So it's very, very odd how these cars are racing. It does appear that a single car can be faster in the right situation.
Now, that 87, he probably feels like he is in a rocket ship right now. How long does he stay behind those cars, or does he try to get to the front of this thing and say, boys, follow me, I found the light?
Yeah, I think Todd is grateful that he finally caught this group, and I don't think he's going to try to race his way to the lead because he has been wide open this entire fuel run. He does have about half of the fuel run left where he can try to save some fuel, and ultimately that's what all of these drivers need to be thinking about is getting to lap 70 before they make their pit stop. So they have to make sure they do that, otherwise their race is going to be over.
You saw just up the road there. I wasn't watching the leaders, but I guess I should have been. 2-car pack out front now. Gavin Adams in that 30. If he doesn't channel his inner Todd Liston here, he might lose those front 2. He's got to be smooth, and you see that weaving around. That's not what you want.
No, definitely not. And yeah, it's odd that he's fallen that far back. So not sure if something kind of happened there that moved him out of position and caused him to have to lift. That's one thing in this type of racing with the speeds that we're running. If you lift any at all, there's like no recovery. You're going to have to try to build that momentum back up over 1 or 2 laps. So he's kind of in that area where he's going to have to build that momentum back up. And right now I'm looking at the gap. He's losing a ton of speed. So before long, he'll be back here with that group we were just watching.
Yeah, and it's just, that may be. We got those 2 cars out front showing that dominant speed, and it just makes me lean a little more towards, like I say, that early 2000s, man, when you came here into Daytona and NASCAR, you needed that drafting partner. two cars were what was working, and I think we're seeing that here a little bit tonight. But, you know, what do they say, JR? It's not about where you start, it's where you finish, right? Greg Hammond. Oh, no, there's the 3 wide. We had it there for a second. Liston, I told you, JR, he wasn't going to waste time.
Yeah, Todd's not. He must feel pretty good on fuel because he's definitely being racy here. And, oh, yeah, it's going to be very close right there. Almost got into the 69, but he's trying to get back down. He wants to be the leader of this pack, and he's obviously got the speed to pull that train around. If they were smart, they would get behind him there.
Yeah, that's where, you know, sometimes they don't have the view that we have. Didn't realize how quick that car is by himself, because really I think they are hindering that pack. I think they'd be a little quicker with that 87 out front right now, but Todd really quick saw the writing on the wall there and maybe realized, hey, I'm not going to make it. Maybe I should channel my inner JR and save a little bit of fuel here.
Yeah, he's going to be better at it than I am. But yeah, he knows what he needs to do, and I think ultimately, you know, we got about another 10, 11 laps when we start to see pit stops occur, and you want to be in that range. One driver that's going to be interesting to watch is one that was on our screen right there, Brian Neff in the 60 car. We know that he pitted early on that last round, so it'll be very interesting to see if he's been able to save the fuel that he needs to get to lap 70. Otherwise, he's going to kind of be the odd man out once we do that final run.
Yeah, and, you know, we remember there he had gotten close to Harden. Remember, Harden had pulled out of the pits. Liston had pulled out of the pits, but Liston was able to drive away from him. But Neff was driving around by himself for 4 or 5 laps. So, I mean, full throttle out there. You know, he definitely burned up a little extra, but hopefully he's able to hold on here in the closing laps. But you saw there on the top, Greg Hammond in that 9 machine. Like I was saying, JR, it's not about where you start, it's where you finish. Started 29th. He's got that thing up to 9th. He's shown you can pass. It's going to take a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, we kind of talked about that high line not being something that you could really make work, but based on what we've seen during this last run, it's starting to add up to me. You know, that bottom of the track is very bumpy. It is moving the cars around. It does scrub off speed every time the bottom of the car hits. The higher you run, the smoother that gets. And obviously, being smooth with these cars is adding a lot of speed down the straightaways. So, being by yourself up on the top side, that could be the key to winning here tonight.
And, you know, I know you had highlighted a little bit, Gavin, you know, he was much lower than the leaders, but boy, oh boy, they've really extended that thing out, up almost 4.5 seconds over that second group in third. The 30 finally going to get some help here from Jonathan Tier in the 69. John, he's going to have to, well, now he catches him, he's going to go to the outside. We're going to battle for third. We're not worried about getting in line.
Yeah, these guys are continuing to race. Obviously the guys that are making moves, they feel comfortable where they are with fuel during this run. And they ultimately want to be that lead car when they pit, just to have that position. And I can say, you know, you can make up or lose time as you're approaching pit road, but one of the advantages to being the leader when you're coming down pit road, or at least the leader of that pack when you're pitting, is that you have all the reference points that you need for braking and being able to see where the pit speed limit line is. All of that is available to you. When you're that car, it's in the back, you can't always see that. So that's one of the reasons why we see some of those guys wanting to lead that pack.
No, that's a good point you brought up there, JR, and that's, you know, a reason they tell drivers, don't get used to that one point, you know, learn a couple, because, boy, if you send that thing in a little deep, you find yourself on the inside of 2 guys, and you don't see that cone or that line where you normally hit the brakes at, man, you can get yourself and the other people around you into a lot of trouble fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there, Todd Liston, he's able to get around one more, but he's watched those 2, you know, 3rd and 4th there. Jonathan Tier and Gavin Adams just absolutely drive away. Remember, the 87 was battling that 69 there to get to the front of this pack, and he absolutely just drove away. So Liston would love to do the same, and I know he feels like he's got some pace, especially coming up on these green flag pit stops. They're going to be creeping up here 7-8 laps.
Yeah, they absolutely are. We're getting closer, and right now, those top 2 drivers, we're watching this pack back here, the 55 of Copeland. Yeah, these drivers are starting to really move around. They're going too wide, trying to establish who's going to be the leader there of the pack. But the guys that are up front here, Isaacs, Allen, they're kind of having the dream race because they've pulled away from everybody. If they can stay together in that round of pit stops here, they have separated. So, yeah, the director telling us they're actually about a 1 second gap that he's falling back. But it looks like Ken Allen's going to be able to pick up at least some help from a lap car. Yeah, so that kind of loses the thought that I had there for a second. But the two that were up front were going to have a dream race if they could have stuck together through that round of pit stops and continued to pull away after we did our last round. They were going to be the ones racing it out for the win. It was going to be between two cars there.
Now, I'd almost still want to keep it that way, JR, which leads me into this next question. If you're Isaacs, long way to go here, man. We still got 36 laps. Do you let out of that throttle and let him regain you there, Ken Allen? So you got the two-car draft working together again? Because we know if they stay by themselves, it is only going to be a matter of time before those guys behind run them down.
Yeah, absolutely. I would prefer to have somebody working with me, even though we've kind of seen one car have the speed. But obviously when you're that one car, you're wide open using the throttle all the way around, burning fuel. So I know we talked about being able to get to lap 70. I'm still kind of pessimistic whether if you pit by yourself, can you do that entire last run all by yourself and make it to the end of the race or not? Only Jerry would know that for sure because he's been out front the most, and he felt like 30 laps was about what he could do. But it always worries me that if you end up being the car by yourself out there the entire last run, that you don't get the fuel mileage you were getting in previous runs. So it'll be interesting to see if he ends up being a guy that's all by himself.
See Liston in a familiar spot trying to run down those two guys ahead of him. There he goes. He gets to the front of that pack, but now the 55 and the 42, they're kind of working together. Liston, he's got to hop on the horse if he wants to catch these guys. Now, JR, how much time? All right, if you're Liston right now and you were going to pull onto pit road, you got about that 3/4 second gap to the cars in front of you. How much time are you willing to try to make up on pit entry? How aggressive do you get? I mean, this is the last time we're going to come down pit road.
Yeah, definitely. If you're by yourself, but you're close enough to where you can see those guys in front of you, you're within a second, you're definitely going to try to be aggressive, getting onto the brakes on the pit road, try to outbrake those guys ahead of you so you close that gap. That's one option that you have. The other option is being able to gain time coming off of pit road as you go around the apron of turn 1 and 2 and filter back in on the backstretch. If you can gain time going through that section, you can close that gap too. So there's two areas he needs to look at, but he can definitely make up that time. And all of these drivers that don't have somebody they're drafting with, I think, are going to be trying to do that. And in doing so, we could see some accidents or some mishaps occur.
Anxious to see these lap times here when they come across, because Ken Allen here, he's really fallen off in P2. The lead's up to 3.3 seconds, and not that I blame the lap car behind him here, but I think I'm starting to figure some of this out here, JR. He is neff. He's going to have to come down pit road. It's lap 67. He ain't going to make it the rest of the way, JR.
No, he's definitely not. So he's got to bank on a caution coming out. Otherwise, he will have to pit one more time for just a splash of fuel, but in doing so, he's going to lose a lap. So it's going to really, really hurt his race. He's going to have a caution.
Now, like I was saying here, Ryan, jump us up to P2 here, Ken Allen, because the lap car behind him, here comes third and fourth too. They're coming. He is not hanging right on that rear bumper, and I think that's what's slowing these cars down. I mean, he is over a second slower a lap than the leader right now, and he's doing nothing but keeping the throttle to the floor. So we're seeing some dynamics play out. I think if you're going to hang around that car behind you's rear bumper, you got to be right up on it, JR. You're going to slow him down.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a point to where you're not close enough. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is get close enough to that driver in front of you to where you're allowing the air to go right over his spoiler. So it's not causing drag or resistance, and return, allowing that front car to speed up. But if you're not that close, you could actually be creating turbulence around that spoiler and actually slowing him down. So definitely, you've got to be organized and working together in order to get the most speed out of these cars.
Looked like we were going to have 3 wide there for a second, but they went back to 2. I thought that 08 was going to stick it in the middle, but car on the outside, the 9, Greg Hammond, he said, I'm the hard charger for a reason, going to live to go a couple more times around this place.
Yeah, definitely. That's something to talk about. Like Greg Hammond, he's up 21 spots during this race. You know, Todd Liston that we've looked at a couple times, he's up 14 spots. So a lot of these drivers are having a really good end to their race if they keep this going.
Lap 69 here, JR. 31 laps, we were told. So I'm under the assumption if we pit this time, it's going to be pretty close, but we're going to go the rest of the way on one stop from here on out. And, you know, something I didn't talk about, I don't think, at the beginning. Sorry if I already did, but, you know, it's 1966. There are no green-white checkered attempts, so you don't have to worry about that extra 1 or 2 laps that sometimes may sneak up on you there in the fuel heat.
Yeah, and that's big. That's big for these drivers to be aware of. So you definitely want to see the rules before all that as we see some of these guys start to pit, but you don't want to take extra fuel. And the other thing is during this round, another way that you can make up time during this round of pit stops is if you have saved a lot of fuel, because we know you only need so much fuel to make it to the end. If you have saved fuel, that means you've got to take less fuel during this last run here, which will decrease your pit stop time, and that can gain you a lot. I mean, 1 second in the pits almost equals a football field. We're not quite running as fast as they do in the stock cars, so it's not quite a football field, but it's very close to that. So you can make up a lot of time by taking less fuel if you're able to.
I'm going to need a whole lot of those 1 seconds if you want me to run a football field here, JR. It's been a long time for me. Right now, Jerry still got that 2.5 second lead. Gavin has cut into it a little bit. He's being smooth as we see driver of the 15 come down pit road for what should be his final pit stop. And here comes one of the leaders. Who we got coming down? Ken Allen. Ken Allen going to dip down, and right behind him, that was that lap car, I believe, of Torrance Childs.
Yeah, and we're right around that time where you're going to start to see a lot of people come in, and going to be larger packs. But Jerry, the race leader that's got a 2.5 second lead right now, he continues to stay out. So we'll see if he comes in this time. But even if he does, I think he's very comfortable on making it on fuel, even if he's all by himself. So this is working out very good for him right now, because we've seen with Todd Liston how well he's been able to do by himself. If Jerry can keep that 2.5 second lead during this round of pit stops, he might just be able to maintain it.
Now, if you're a driver, how worried are you? Oh, wait, what was I even going to say here? I was going to bring up something about, oh my gosh, it slipped my mind. Whatever, we'll just go back to the leader here in this 51. It's going to pop in my mind in probably 2 or 3 laps, and I'm going to be real frustrated. But if you, oh, okay, yep, here we go, I remembered. Now, with the field strung out single file here, JR, are you worried about, you know, pitting early and a possible caution trapping you a lap down, or the fact that the field's spread out, kind of, you know, a little more clear-headed, not as worried?
For me as a driver, I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm always somebody that if you're running the rules like this where you do not have an opportunity for a lucky dog, you want to do everything you can to prevent yourself from going a lap down, which normally means running as long as you can on fuel before you pit. Obviously, I think that's what Jerry's plan is. That's why he stayed out on track so long here, just to make sure that he doesn't pit and something weird happens, because we've not had any cautions with the racing out here. In general. So the one thing that can produce cautions is when you kind of break up that rhythm that the drivers are in, and pit stop cycles break up that rhythm. You see mistakes made coming to pit road or exiting pit road.
We see the driver, he had success by himself earlier. He's going to come down pit road by himself here. The driver of the 87, Todd Liston, came to a stop a little early, but that shouldn't cost him too much time. Did a pretty good job there getting on pit road.
Yeah, definitely better to be a little bit conservative. Just make sure you do not overshoot your pit box, because that will kill your pit stop altogether. You lose tons of time. We're watching some of those guys pit. Up here on the screen, trying to see who we got here. I guess we've got Jerry that's continuing to lead. He's actually come up on Ken Allen. Got Allen a lap down through this round of pit stops. Obviously, Jerry's got to pit one more time here, though.
Yeah, and this is where, Jerry's going to come down pit road now, but I was a little surprised that Ken was just going to pull over and let him go because, 1966 here, JR, you got to keep that thing on the lead lap. And, I mean, all he did was come down under green flag pit stop. So there, it's all fair and love and war, I think, there to try to defend your position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got to, especially as you get later in the race. May not be something you do at the beginning of the race just to keep it clean, but toward the end, you've got to do everything you can on that.
Now, interesting thing here. Can we look at Isaac's car real quick? Or actually, the right sides just went down. But I'm telling you, now here go up the left sides. So these guys, maybe with how long it takes to put the tires on, maybe we're getting fuel, or maybe he did that by accident. But the 51 there got all fresh for rubber on there.
Yeah, it definitely looks like the time to fuel the cars is much greater than the time to change the tires. So definitely, it may not be something that he needed to do, but why not? Let's get the cooler tire temps back on there.
Yeah.
Is that Bianchi that we see coming there? Yeah, I think it's Brian Bianchi. Looks like he may be out of fuel, just coasting to pit road.
And man, you can just watch the time grow on the stopwatch going. I mean, he's going 12, now 11 miles per hour. 10, he is just crawling, JR. Is he even going to make it?
Yeah, and we see Isaacs, he's continuing to pull away. He's actually opened up his gap during that round of pit stops, but going back to Brian Bianchi, it's going to be a rough start to the season for him. We know he's the defending champion here. He may not make it. It looks like he is not able to make it to his pit stop, so he actually had to tow. So this is going to be a long, long season for him. He's got a lot of points to make up after this race.
Yep, and that just goes back to what we said. Guys like Torrance Copeland who have been a lap down, and this is why you stay out there and you just keep plugging away. With that tow time, though he did make it to pit road, the tow time shouldn't be too long. But he's going to be looking at a minute at least, and I mean, that's a whole lap on the racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's going to be many laps down, and what hurts the most out of all that is that we've not had a whole lot of action on track. There's not guys that are out of this race due to accidents. Normally in a super speedway type race, you'd have a lot of accidents. You could be 3 or 4 laps down and still get an okay finish. He doesn't have that to fall back on right now.
Now, if you're the 30 here, Gavin Adams, he's going to make a move here for P2, it looks like. But boy, oh boy, I mean, when do you start talking to the driver of that 42, Mark Fish and Gavin Adams? They got to work together if they want to run down this leader.
Yeah, they're going to have to do something because, man, Isaacs, when he pitted, he had about it was almost a 2.5 second lead. He's been able to open up another second during this round. It does look like this last time by that the second, third place cars have started to close in on him, but they're going to have to get organized in order to make up all that ground. Otherwise, they're just giving this race over to him.
Yeah, our cameraman just caught him on there. What about that man in 5th place? JR, I know we've called races with this guy in it before. I am blown away by what I'm seeing in this driver of the 87. He has been out of the draft so many times that I would have rode him off 50 laps ago, and yet he's just driven this missile up to the front, got it in the top 5, and I mean, here, he's ready to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we look at Todd, he's a driver that we see on the short tracks all the time. But obviously when it comes to this style of racing on the Daytona Super Speedway, he's able to get it done. And out of all the drivers that we show on the screen, I mentioned it earlier, he looks the smoothest. Like, I do not see his car moving around like I see some of the other drivers out there. And that's equating to speed. That's why he's been able to do some of the things that he's done.
Now, obviously, nobody can really be comfortable driving this car at 150 mile an hour. I mean, it's not very natural, but I mean, any insight as to why maybe Todd could be so smooth here? I mean, just good wheel settings or just real comfortable driver?
He could just be a real comfortable driver. He's been somebody, I've raced with him on short tracks, and he's always been somebody that's been really smooth. When you are racing around him, you feel comfortable around him, and you can run your line without having to worry about what he's doing. But he's obviously making that work on the larger speedway, and I talk to it all the time. A lot of drivers ask me how to find speed, what the secret is. There's not a secret. It's all about finding what works for you. And Todd may have just found those right wheel settings that he needs to be super smooth to get that speed out of this car. So that's important for each and every driver. Find what works for you. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting to see here the 42 of Mark Fish. He's running down your leader. But here actually comes the 55 of Dale Copeland. Now he is getting one of the biggest runs I've seen on the racetrack all day. He'll go to the outside and take back over P2. Man, oh man, he found that magic mark. I was going to say the 42 was quick out there, but oh my gosh, you float around, it looks like that half a second mark behind the guy. Look at that run, those two guys.
Yeah, that was big, and once these drivers got semi-organized, I mean, they took 2 seconds off of the leader's gap right there. So it's very possible for them to make it up. They're going to have to get organized if they want to continue to move forward and have an opportunity here, which we continue to see them kind of race side by side and work on each other. They're trying to determine who's going to be the leader of this pack, but ultimately they're going to have to get a little more organized if they want to go up there and get to 51.
Yeah, now, JR, you know, normally I'd encourage these guys to get in line, but right now, the battle between the 30 and the 55 may be the battle for the lead, because with the run they get on that leader, you're going to be able to just drive by him like he's stuck in the sand. And here comes that 3-car group. You're watching them reel them in. I think the 30 sees the writing on the wall there. He's going to lift out a little bit, try to get in line and go back for one more run, because that pull those guys are getting on the inside is just too much for him to try to get it done on the outside by himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Once they had that toe, he was just not able to make the outside work at all. But, yeah, these drivers that are getting the run, I think they're going to have to take it as soon as they get there. This is their best opportunity to make that pass when you have that big run. Otherwise, it's going to be a little more difficult. We've seen drivers be able to make it happen, but it's going to be more difficult. I think they need to make it happen once they get there.
Yeah, and the savior in the 87, Todd Liston, he's bringing that second pack with him. He is loving this side-by-side in front of him that you just saw on your screen, because it is just widening that air wake so much. And, man, that 30 gets that run on the outside all by himself again, JR.
Yeah, and that's, you know, we talked about it at the beginning. Did not expect that at all out of these cars, but it just seems like the top of the track is a little bit smoother. The car's not bottoming out as much. You're also able to hold that wheel smoother, so that equates to speed in these cars, and that's what these drivers are doing. You see Todd's going to bring Ken Allen with him on the high side through here, and the great thing about Todd, you know, we talked about him being fast, but now it looks like he has a very good partner in Ken Allen pushing him the way that he needs to have that little bit of extra speed.
Yeah, and Ken, remember, that was the guy who we saw Isaacs put a lap down right before he came on pit road, so just shows you stay out there, you plug away. You can be worried there for a little bit, but you just got to keep it in your head that that leader's got a pit stop too, and everything's going to work itself out. Here comes the 42 on the outside. We may have a battle for the lead here going down the backstretch. Not much of one. The Fish made quick work of that.
Yeah, and it's that's a great example right there. You know, we saw Gavin get right to the back of Jerry, and as soon as he did, it was like it slowed him down. And we touched on it a little bit, but it's like it slowed him down. So if you don't get super organized and right on the bumper of that lead car, it in fact does slow you down, and that third place guy is able to go to the outside and just drive right around. So you see Mark Fish, he's able to open up a little bit of a gap, almost a half second on those guys just in that one lap.
Yeah, and we know Liston, he didn't start up towards the front. He's watched that happen out of the front windshield all day, so no better man than him. He's got to know right now if he can get the run, he can get to the outside, maybe get a run and go to work on this leader. But right now, he's having a tough time running those two down in front of him. Ken's able to get to the rear end now, try to give him a shot. But we're seeing that. I mean, the 30 not hanging right behind the bumper of the 51, and he's not able to catch the 42 even with that draft help. If that car's behind you, they got to be close. You see the 30 getting closer now, and now they start reeling in that gap. It's almost like you're painting out there. It really is a work of art to use this draft tonight.
It absolutely is, and it's one of those things when you're that lead car, you've almost got to be looking in your mirror the whole time. You know that guy behind you that's helping you is not going to be trying to make a move on you, but you got to be looking in the mirror to see exactly where he's at. If you start to pull away too much, you're probably going to have to drag that brake just a little bit to come back to his front bumper in order to stay connected and keep that speed going.
Now, I'm so glad you said drag your brake. Now, obviously, I'm going to pretend to know why you said that. But now, why do we drag the brake, JR, instead of lifting out of the throttle?
Yeah, you just lose way too much momentum when you lift out of the throttle. Obviously, in real life with the carburetors and stuff like that, you didn't want to lift out of the throttle because it leaned out the fuel system and would ultimately burn out one of your pistons and stuff in the engine and be detrimental to your race. But in these iRacing machines, lifting on that throttle, it just takes too much to get that momentum back going. So if you drag that brake, just barely tap that brake a little bit to slow your speed down 1-2 mile an hour, you can allow yourself to back up to that car behind you, allow the bumpers to connect, and then get your speed going back again, because ultimately that's what we've seen. You've got to stay connected like we see on screen with Todd Liston and Ken Allen. Staying connected like that's the fastest way. If you got any kind of gap between the front and rear cars, it's ultimately slowing you down just a little bit.
Now, we saw the 42 the last time before green flag pit stops. He used that lap car to manipulate traffic perfectly and walk out to that big lead. Can he do it again? We see the 30 of Gavin Adams there, 3 cars up the road. He's not right on the tail tank. Then we got some lap traffic. The 42 is going to be getting some draft here soon, JR, and looks like he's pulling away from that 30 a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Marking the leader here, he's in a great spot. He's out in front. Now, the thing is, we see the gap on our screen. He's been able to open it up on this lap quite a bit from the second and third place guys. But the problem with that is that if these second and third place guys ever get super organized and push to each other, they've got a huge run that they're going to have on Mark, and they're going to be able to go right by. But having said that, when we look on the screen, you can see just ahead of Mark, he's catching somebody, so he's going to have somebody that he can potentially work with here to help him out if that car is able to get right in behind him.
Yeah, and you said it. Well, Brian Neff, he's getting word here. He made that final pit stop. We knew he was going to be short. He's going to be hoping for a caution. Now, hopefully with only a couple laps left, JR, your saving grace might be that, well, your pit stop's going to be a little quicker. You don't need to slap that thing full of fuel. So maybe he won't lose as much time, but, man, that's still going to cost him.
Yeah, it's going to be very costly, and we watch on the screen here, Liston and Ken Allen, they've worked together and actually been able to take over that third spot. Ken's going to try to clear for fourth position here. May not be able to, but you can see the run that Ken by himself was able to get. I just got to think that's because that high line is smoother, not something that I anticipated, but it's working in these Tour Modifieds.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, these things, they do have a lot of power, and only doing around the 150, 155. I was kind of on board with you. I didn't think that cranking the wheel, that you're not doing it that much harder, to run the bottom around here. The banking really helps you. But it seems like just the straighter you can keep that thing, the faster you're going in a straight line. And Liston, you saw he was pinched down there on the bottom. He had got that thing up to third. And now it's falling back to fifth here as we watch Jerry Isaacs slowly creep up on your leader here. We're going to have a battle through 3 and 4, JR.
Yeah, he's going to go to the outside, Jerry is, to try to make this pass. You can see him closing in. He's going to have Ken Allen going with him to help him here. So they should be able to clear that 42 on the front stretch.
We'll have to see what kind of run does Ken Allen go down. He does. He shuts the door. Plenty of room to do so. And, well, with 14 laps to go, you got to think right now, anybody in this top 5 could bring it home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's anybody's race that's within that 2-second mark, which is that top 5 right now. And I think you may see it a little bit calm for another lap or two. Once we get inside 10 laps to go, I think you're going to see a lot of passing back and forth. It may be 2 or 3 passes a lap occurring because these drivers are going to try to be fighting hard to be that lead car, especially as they come off turn 4.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes back to what we talked about a couple laps ago. If I'm the 51 now, I've just got it so ingrained in my head here, JR, that when that white flag flies, I don't want to be out front. But, I mean, these guys have proved that you can kind of manipulate it. Watch that mirror. I asked you once. I'm going to ask you again here. You're on that screen. Which one of those drivers do you want to be here coming down to the final 10?
Based on everything I've seen, if it's a 3-car pack like we got these front 3 at the moment, I'd like to be that 3rd place driver, but that's assuming everybody stays organized until we come off the last corner. I've got a feeling that you're going to see 2nd and 3rd place start to fight each other, try to be that 2nd place car in line, and if they do that, that leader is going to be able to pull away and ultimately win the race. So it's going to be very important how the 2nd and 3rd place drivers are able to work together.
And the fish, man, in 3rd place. He's watching those two absolutely team up and pull away from him a little bit. So, gonna have to lock that thing down, try to stay within that draft. Ken Allen doing his absolute best to make this thing a 2-car race to the finish. As we see the top 5, they're kind of spreading out other than these front 2.
Yeah, they've definitely opened up a gap, and that's smart on their part if they can do that, because then that will mean that the race will come down to one of those drivers winning, as opposed to, say, 5 drivers having the potential to do it that we talked about earlier. So, but as we say that, we see that they get a gap in between each other. That's ultimately going to slow them down a little bit. So they got to stay organized through these last laps if they want to make that work. And having said that, we see back there those drivers in 3rd and 4th place, they need to get organized so they can catch those guys.
And I was just about to say they finally are going to get organized, and there, check it out, JR. The 30 goes to the high side. He's battling for the podium right now.
Yeah, they're definitely, they want to be the lead car out of the 2 there. For sure, but these drivers are in a great position if they kind of work together. Because I don't think you want to be right on the back bumper of the 1st and 2nd place car when we come into the last lap. We know the 1st and 2nd place guys, they're not going to stay that way. They're going to try to race each other. Once they go too wide, these guys are going to be able to get a huge run on them if they're within that 1 second mark. Right now, they're not. So they've got to, over these next 6 or 7 laps, they've got to close that gap down to about 1 second if they want to have an opportunity to win here.
Yeah, I assume with where they have the air cooler placed on these things that these guys they won't run into overheating issues, because Ken Allen has just been glued to the rear end of this 51 for 3 laps, man. You couldn't slide a credit card in between those cars.
No, and Ken's being super smart. So, yeah, he knows that the bigger the gap they have, the more he can race that 51 for the win at the end and not have to worry about losing positions. So, yeah, he's pretty well guaranteeing himself a top 2 finish if they maintain this 3.5 second lead they've opened up on the 3rd place car going into the white flag lap.
Yeah, now, if you're Mark Fish, you just keep telling yourself that things could get a little chaotic in front of you here. There's still 10 to go, but right now you're watching the hopes of winning this race just dwindle right in front of you. That leads to 4 seconds, the front 2 have. So right now it seems like it is a battle between the 51 and the 81 here. So we're coming down. We got, let's say 22 and a half miles left this time by.
Yeah, definitely the laps are counting down as we're coming to the end here, and you see these top 2 drivers, they're catching lap traffic, but that's going to increase their speed. That's going to allow them to even open up that gap more on the 3rd and 4th and 5th place cars. So, yeah, this is kind of working out nicely for that lead 2.
And now if you're lap traffic here, obviously, like I say, early on, all rights to a battle for the spot, but I think we see the drivers doing the right thing, getting up out of the way. At this point, 8 to go, you're going a lap down. I think the writing's kind of on the wall, and this is where you see a lot of respect from some of those other drivers who have maybe been up towards the front, JR, and hasn't gone their way with lap traffic. We see experienced guys getting up out of the way. It's nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're inside the 10 to go, it's one of those things where you just kind of concede to the leaders and don't try to get in their way because they're racing for the win. And they're going to recognize that. You know, we talked about drivers not forgetting. Well, they're not going to forget somebody that's being respectful and getting out of the way. They will return that favor if they're in the opposite situation moving forward in the season. So definitely want to be respectful to the leaders. They'll return it at some later date.
Now, JR, a guy like you who doesn't go a lap down, how do you return the favor?
Yeah, it's definitely different if you're not in a position to where you're being that lap down car. I have been from time to time just from being caught up in accidents, but if you're not in that position, then definitely you kind of repay the favor as you're just racing through the field, because at some point you're going to start behind those drivers. You're going to have a bad qualifying run. Something's not going to go your way, and you're going to have to start in the back of the pack, and you're going to have to come through the field, and you want to be respectful with how you race that driver. You're going to give that driver more room as you're racing around them and just say, hey, thanks for what you've done racing me in the past.
You're going to see that. Well, it's going to tighten up here a little bit now between the 81, but that gap opened up a little bit. He let out of the throttle. Boy, he almost hooked the I-6. Going into 3 there, he went up a little high. And, you know, that's the dangers of running bumper to bumper with someone. You see now, it's really opening up. He got out of that little wake, and now the 22. I know Bruce, you know, doesn't want to play into this, but this is where he's maybe thinking he's not going to do any harm here, JR. But if he doesn't get up to the back of that 18 or that 81 here quick at Ken Allen might watch that checker flag run away from him.
Yeah, it's very possible. Definitely, Ken's got to find a way to maintain that gap a little bit better to the leader there. And, you know, that's what Isaacs is trying to do. He knows that they've got a big enough lead. He's trying to pull away and open up a gap. At the same time, Ken Allen at this point is going, I can back off for a few laps and make sure that I have a huge run at the end. But it's all coming down to timing. You've got to time this stuff correctly. And it all goes back to the experience you've gained through the first half of the race. You've got to start to put that to use and know exactly how far back you can lay, what kind of run you can get, and exactly where you're going to get that run and be able to try to make the pass.
We were just looking at that 4-car pack there with Negus, Johnson, Ogle, and Pittman, and well, that's half those cars are going to make it in the top 10, half aren't. So right now, if you're Negus and Johnson running 9th and 10th, they move to the front of that 4-car pack. Would you rather be those two, or would you rather be sitting 11th and 12th in that 4-car deal? I mean, how are you planning that to bring home the top 10?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're in a pack like that, you don't want to be the guys out front. I think the guys behind you are going to be able to manipulate that draft and get the run on you, especially through turns 3 and 4 coming to the checkered. So I think that's where you'd prefer to be. But on the other hand, you know, Scott Negus, Brian Johnson, they started 25th and 30th back there. So they've made up a ton of ground in this race. I think even if they were to come home just outside the top 10, they're still going to have a good day.
Yeah, most definitely. Up 20 spots there for Negus. Is the hard charger at the moment. But like you said, Brian Johnson, he's up 16. So is that man Todd Liston up in the top 5. So right now we're seeing Ken Allen. I think, you know, I was maybe overreacting earlier, JR, and you hit the nail right on the head. We're going to let that gap open up, and we're going to go at this one more time, one last big swing, I think, here.
Yeah, and, you know, Ken's done it a couple of times. So Ken's rehearsing for the last lap here. He's trying to figure out exactly what that correct distance is that he needs to be when he comes to the white flag, because we've seen him drop back to almost a second and then close that gap back up, and then he'll drop back a little bit and try it again. So he's seeing what works and exactly when he needs to time that run.
Yeah, you watched him open it up to almost a second. There was up to 9.8. He's reeling him back in now, reeling in the fishing line. We're 4 laps to go this time by 10 miles of racing left. That's going to go pretty quick here, JR. So I think Ken's plan is here, you get one big run. And, I mean, maybe you went a little too early, but I think you got to make this move now.
Yeah, I would definitely be willing to try it for sure. I mean, he came from a second back at the start-finish line, and he's already closed up right on the bumper. He's going to go to the outside here in turn 3 and 4 and try to make this pass work.
Donnie Moore, too. Does he come up? Does he play a factor in this? Is he just creeping into your screen there, that 22? Or a lap down? Or Bruce Pearson? I don't know why I call him Donnie Moore all the time. I'm so good at that for some reason. I've done that in probably 3 broadcasts this season. Bruce Pearson is probably going to want me fired by the end of this.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. We were watching Ken try to make that pass, and it was like he stalled out. I'm curious if that was an actual stall out or if he's just trying to convince the 51 that the pass is not going to be made. It's kind of a cat and mouse game here when it comes down to just 2 cars racing for the win in a race like this.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and it is going to be a 2-car battle unless we get a caution, because everybody looking at the leaderboard there, you see 8 seconds back to 3rd. So, I mean, if you needed a pusher tonight, Ken Allen was the man for the job. He's just been on rails, and, you know, credit goes to that 51 too, JR, because you know how hard it is to push a guy like me shaking all around that racetrack in front of you. You got to be able to hold your line. It's a 2-man deal.
Yeah, absolutely. That lead car has to be very stable, has to be very smooth. If they get offset from you any at all, it can really upset the car or spin you around. So it definitely takes 2 drivers. Both of them have to be connected and smooth with what they're doing on the wheel.
Now, interesting here, 2 laps to go here, JR. You saw they caught a little bit of lap traffic, and it's really helping the 51. I don't know if it's maybe stalled out the 81 of Ken Allen, but boy, oh boy, lap traffic seems to have hit Jerry Isaacs at just the right time.
Yeah, not at all what Ken Allen wanted to see. He's still going to have an opportunity if he can get a run here, but it looks like he's falling back, and that's exactly what Jerry and the 51 car needed, was just a little bit or a little hint of draft to pull him forward for this closing lap.
Yeah, and you know, Ken, he's back there. He's got 2 lap cars racing for position in front of him. I just don't know if I like the looks of this for the 81, but the white flag's in the air. We got 1 more flag left here. Checkers or wreckers, JR?
Yep, Ken's trying to get a big run. I think the lap cars are going to be respectful and give him that bottom lane, but he's always going to hit and make contact and go down on the apron. That's going to scrub off all of the speed he had. It may take him more than just this last lap to regain that, so this run may be over for Ken.
Yeah, tough break there. The Lipper maybe not aware that the 81 was going to throw that move to the inside. And going down the backstretch here for the final time, Ken Allen is going to need a lot of help right now. He's back almost half a second. We're watching it reel in, down to 4/10, down to 3/10. JR, we might be in for a good one.
He's closing in fast, so he's going to have a run as he comes to the start-finish line. I did not think he had time to do it, but he's going to at least get side-by-side with the leader here.
Yeah, side-by-side at the line, and Ken Allen steals the checkered flag. Oh,
wow.
My gosh. JR, I know absolutely nothing about racing tour mods at Daytona International Speedway. I counted out Ken Allen 3 or 4 times on that final lap. Unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable finish, and maybe that mistake through turn 1 and 2 is ultimately what helped Ken there, because it allowed him to make the pass on the front stretch instead of having it come in the corner. So, yeah, fantastic job, great finish.
No, you're exactly right there. I mean, way to turn a hiccup there into gold. You make a little contact with a lap car, you think you're written off. Well, I bet you can't. When we talked to him, he probably never thought that thing was written off. He kept that thing pinned down, drove his way to the front. But we were treated to an amazing race here, and we're going to take a real short break here on the Virtual Grip Network, give those drivers a chance to get a little drink, catch their breath, maybe wipe the sweat off those hands, and we'll be right back here on the Virtual Grip Network to interview your top 3. Stick around. We're back live on the Virtual Grip Network, and we're going to do a rundown of your finishing order here this evening for your OBRL Icebreaker 250 presented by VctryLnSprts. Stealing the checkered flag at the line and an absolute buzzer beater, Ken Allen takes home the win. Jerry Isaac, head in his palms, wondering what he has to do after leading most of this race, absolutely setting the pace, but going to bring it home P2. Todd Liston rounding out your podium. Gavin Adams fourth. The Fish, Mark Fish, rounding out the top five. Jeffrey Harden coming home sixth. Dale Copeland seventh. Brian Johnson eighth. Scott Negus ninth. And Tom Ogle rounding out your top 10.
Yeah, your next 10 finishers coming home in 11th place tonight. We got Ryan Pittman. We saw him with a lot of action tonight. Coming home in 12th place, Lloyd Moore. 13th place will go to Bill Martin. 14th place tonight is Dave Batone. 15th, Randy Schuler. 16th place tonight, Alan Wanamaker. 17th goes to Jonathan Tier. 18th place going back to Daryl Weiniger. 19th place be Chris Hazlip. 20th will be Dustin Martinson tonight.
Rounding out the back third of the field here, the Double Deuce, Bruce Pearson coming home 21st. Jeff Lemire coming home 22nd. Steve Hilbert 23rd. Greg Hammond 24th. Rory Collins 25th. Tom Hilbert 26th. Brian Neff after that extra pit stop bringing it home 27th. Torrance Childs 28th. Your defending series champion after a rough night. You saw him have the spin through the grass. Brian Bianchi coming home 29th. And, well, rounding out the field, Rex Hoyle in the 54. Still not too sure what happened to him, JR, but he was running up in that group. But the front six seemed to be broken away. And, well, that thing just shot up the racetrack. And that was our one and only caution, man. We were treated to a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Great show by these drivers tonight. Going green flag with the difficulty of the cars and the way they were moving around. Great show, not having a lot of cautions.
Well, let's bring up the driver of the 87 here, your third place finisher, Todd Liston. Todd, Shaggy up in the booth, man. You got a copy?
10-4, I got you, Shaggy.
I'll tell you what, man. I don't even know what question I'm going to ask you first because this may be the most confusing race at Daytona I've ever seen. I mean, at one point, Todd, you ran down a group of 3 cars in front of you, and I thought the draft was important, man. How'd you do that?
In my opinion, I know there's a lot of conflicting opinions. I think honestly, the main key to this race was, as with most modified races, you've got all that tire. It's tire, and I think if you created any friction in that tire whatsoever, you had to be super smooth. I know there's been some talk about oil temperatures and things like that. One thing was the car would bottom out, so you would. If you hit too steep of an incline, I think that'd slow you down a bit if you didn't do it just right. And I also think that you scrubbed so much, even just being in the draft behind somebody with the air moving around you, the air would scrub the tires just a little bit, that it kind of killed some of that momentum.
Todd, you touched on needing to be smooth, and the man up here with me, JR, absolutely complimented you countless times. That 87 was the smoothest car on the racetrack. And Todd, how do we do that? I mean, are you driving around singing some Celine Dion to yourself, or what's the trick? How are you that smooth?
You just focus on moving the wheel as little as possible. If you got to move it, but just try to keep it as straight as possible.
Well, Todd, it's week number 1. Still got 14 to go, but finishing on the podium week 1, that's a heck of a start for that 87. And coming from 21st to do so, great run, my man. Congratulations. Who you want to thank before we kick you out of here?
Thank you, Shaggy. I want to point everybody's attention to GasCitySpeedway.com. I already submitted this paint before I repainted my bootleg car, but that grassroots movement for my home track, any promoters or even any personal donations that want to go into that, or in just personal interest at all, visit that website and help out where you can. I want to thank Bill here in the league for putting on a practice session. Learned a whole lot of things the night before this race, and I want to thank Alan for putting on this league. It's always fun. I'm looking forward to a new season. I want to thank you guys up in the booth for putting on a good show every week.
Well, hey, man, that just shows you found yourself hung out by yourself countless times, but, dude, you put that head down, went to work, and finished on the podium. Heck of a job, Todd. Can't wait to talk to you again, brother.
Thanks, Shaggy.
Now we're going to bring up the man who finished P2, and JR, who you got?
Yeah, I'm here with Jerry Isaacs. Jerry, first off, thanks for talking with us during the race, taking that time while you were still driving the car. You qualified on pole, man. You led 75 laps. I know it's not the finish you wanted because of how strong you were, but you still walk away with second place. Was there anything you could have done different at the end of the race?
I could have figured out how to make this car go fast. We were struggling with, everybody was struggling with it. You'd be fast for 5 laps and then it just would die 1 lap. And we were trying all different things, different lines, different methods of pushing. And I think that's about it. I got to thank Kenny for pushing me out. I mean, the two of us had that big gap all because of his pushing me at the end. And I just kind of, I don't know what I could have done. If you know, tell me.
Now, I wish I did know. We're as confused as you watching the race. It was hard to tell what was creating the speed and what wasn't, and we saw some odd moves and passes being made that we just didn't think would be possible tonight. So, yeah, we're confused by it as well, but ultimately, I know it's not the win, but it's a second place. It was a double points night, so it's a big night for you. It's going to help a lot in the championship moving forward. Which brings me to my next point. How do you feel going into the next race that we're going to at South Boston?
I feel good, man. I enjoy these modifieds, especially on the small tracks. Tonight was fun, but I'm glad we just have one of these big races. And you know, I don't know. I'm a top 5 guy. I think I can run up there in the top 5. I'm hoping I can just be consistent enough to matter at the end.
Absolutely. Well, big points night. You definitely made it pay off tonight by getting everything that you could possibly get out there. Before I let you go, man, again, thank you for talking with us when you were on pit road earlier. But who do you want to thank for your run tonight and also for the season that you got ahead of you here?
You bet. I want to thank you guys at Virtual Grip for putting it out there so that my mom can watch. I appreciate that. And YesterYear Racing for putting on the session, the folks at Elliott Sadler Esports for putting me in the car, and last but not least, hey, Mom.
Awesome job, man. Hey, Jerry, we enjoyed talking with you so far. Hopefully we get to do it a lot more this season, man.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys, that's Jerry Isaacs. He's our second place finisher tonight. With that, Shaggy, who you caught up with?
I got the winner up here, driver of the 81, Ken Allen. Ken, all right, man. Before we talk about crossing the finish line first, we're coming out of we're going into turn 1 on the white flag lap. You make a little contact with a lap car. Now, be honest with me. Did we think it was over at that point in time?
Yeah, it was over. Actually, I was already congratulating Jerry going down the back straightaway.
Oh, man, that probably made it that much sweeter when you come storming like a bat out of you-know-where, man, coming out of 3 and 4. Because we were watching the timer just tick down. I mean, it goes from 4/10 to 3/10. I told JR we got something coming to the line. And were you expecting, maybe having to paint the fence a little bit? Were you surprised Jerry gave you as much room as he did?
No. I think Jerry. You know, I didn't race a lot last year, but I raced enough with the front runners like Jerry and Ryan, Tom, and they're all clean drivers. I didn't really. I expected maybe a little bit of a side draft or something, but you know, he said, you know, it caught him by surprise, a little bit by surprise, how big the run was. So it was catching me by surprise.
Yeah, you know, I mean, JR did a good job of diving in there with Jerry and asking him a little bit, but what were you finding with the draft tonight? You know, it seemed like we'd see cars succeed by themselves. Other drivers couldn't do anything by themselves. And then we'd see 2-car packs, some 3-car packs. What worked for you tonight?
Well, I realized I could never unlock what was dragging the cars down and what was building speed. But there was a moment in the first run where me and Gavin got separated from the top 4, and I started pushing them, but not hard push, just couple the cars together and just stay steady and smooth. And we made a lot of ground. And during the mid race, a lot of guys everybody was trying to unlock what was the right draft. Was it leapfrogging? Was it bump drafting? What was it? And I didn't want to play my hand there. I was really confident that the coupling would work, and I coupled with Todd there and made my move to the front. And then when I got to Jerry, I thought, well, I'm just going to push him. I want to see if I can get me and him away from everybody, and then just settle it one-on-one between us. And it didn't play out how I thought it would, but it did play out right.
No, man, you're exactly right, dude. If you're going to sit down at a poker table, try to get it the heads up. And, man, that's exactly what you did. You hooked that thing up. Big run on that final lap. And I'm telling you, when you go back and watch this, you can hear it in our voice, dude. We thought you were done just like you did. And, man, that pass, that's going to stand up the test of time here this season. And, well, before I let you thank everybody, Kenny, you talked a little bit about, you tried to make as many races as you could last season. Starting out with a win on a double points night, you got to be going for the old boot this year, right?
This is career win number 1, so I'm going to take this down a little bit. I think I'm going to relish the thought that I got to win at Daytona. Brian, Tom, Ryan, Jerry, Todd, those guys, when we get back to the bull rings, they're going to be the guys to beat. And I got a little bit of advantage, but I know I got my work cut out for me. Yeah, I'm more focused. Maybe I could be Rookie of the Year this year before I'll be a champion.
Hey, man, who says you can't knock them both off at once? Right now, that 81's
Right.
sitting at the top of the point sheet, looking pretty good up there. But, Ken, like I said, man, congratulations. You really stole that one at the end. Before we kick you out of here, who you want to thank, brother?
First of all, thank Alan for putting this whole thing on. You guys for the awesome broadcast week after week. Lowell, Ryan, JR, all you guys are awesome. Thank you, my wife, because she's having to sit up here late tonight. She's ready to go to bed, but I got this thing running, so so I have to be appreciative of her for doing this.
Well, tell her to pop a bottle open, start shaking it up, man. You're in
That's
victory
right.
lane.
We're getting ready to celebrate.
That's right, Kenny. Congratulations, man. And hey, when we're back in a month, brother, I hope we're talking to you again. I'm rooting
Thanks
for
a
you.
lot. All right, thank you guys.
I'll tell you what, JR here. We did not know what we were in for tonight. I'm an honest broadcaster. I thought, it maybe wasn't going to be that good of a show, but I'll tell you what, these YesterYear Tour Modifieds, they stunned me. This was a great show. I couldn't ask for much more.
Yeah, absolutely. We learned a lot tonight about how these vehicles handle on a track like this, but also we learned a lot about the driving and the driving standards in this league, and it looks like it's going to be super promising moving forward. I hope that these drivers keep this up, because this puts on fantastic races when you're able to be that respectful but still be able to race hard. And we'll learn more at South Boston in a month, but I look forward to this season. It looks like it's going to be very, very exciting with the group of drivers that we have.
Yeah, we're spoiled with the talent and just respect level, because I'll tell you, there aren't many guys who would say in an interview coming to the checkered flag at Daytona that they didn't expect to get run up in the wall. But man, I'm excited for what this year has to come, but that's going to be a little bit of ways. Why don't we take a look at what's coming up next on the Virtual Grip Network? Now, of course, I talked. We're a month out here, pretty much exactly a month. The 25th of March, we're going to roll into South Boston. Now, you talked about Sobo a little bit, JR, but we're going into a little bull ring here, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like South Boston, for sure. It's a tough track, especially in the modified. There's some unique lines that you can run. So it's going to be close quarters. We're probably going to see some contact, even with the talent that we've got out there. But it's going to put on a great show, so we're going to see a lot of action.
Yeah, and that's, of course, going to be Tuesday, March 25th at 8:25. And then, well, coming up next on the Virtual Grip Network this Thursday, two buddies of ours, Soup and John Hine, on the call. We got the Red Light Racing SK Modified Series at the USA International Speedway. That'll be their week 8, and it's coming up this Thursday at 7:55. They're going to kick that off. But man, like I said, I'm just blown away. That finish, unbelievable. Ken Allen steals it, and the OBRL Icebreaker 250 presented by VctryLnSprts was just good luck the rest of the 14 races. They've got a lot to live up to. But on behalf of everyone at the Virtual Grip Network, I'd like to thank my partner, J.R. Shepard, our dude in the back, Ryan Seneker, and last but not least, all of you. Have a good night.